Good morning. This is Karen Kennedy, and welcome to the November HIIN monthly call. Good afternoon. Sorry. Thank you, Madeline. It's been a busy morning, I guess. So let me start over. Good afternoon. This is Karen Kennedy. Thank you for joining us for the November HIIN monthly call. All the lines are muted right now, and but we will open those up throughout the call as needed, and then also feel free, if you have any questions or comments, to put those into the chat function within Zoom. So we're here just as we are every month, and we start off with our mission to advance health in Indiana, and our 4 pillars to prevent patient harm, improve community health, and increase patient and family engagement, and lead a culture of safety. And before we move on to the next slide, I just wanted to share a connect to purpose and how this work really just kind of, I think, ties together very nicely. I wanted just to share actually a personal story. For many of you probably don't know this, but recently my 86-year-old second cousin moved from Kansas to Indiana because she needed to be closer to family, and my husband, myself, and my daughter are the closest family. So she's living in a retirement community in Terre Haute. So unfortunately, Joe, a couple weeks ago, had a hospitalization and had a really good experience at the hospital. But during that visit, she did learn, several things that were happening with her chronic conditions. But what I wanted to share with you is that the hospital identified her as a fall risk, which she indeed is, did the right thing, followed their procedures, put on her falls wrist, her yellow wristband, had a little yellow sign above her headboard, had yellow socks, and did a great job preventing harm within the hospital. So check that box off. What I thought was really neat, though, was that through the hospitalization, Joe identified a fall risk in her room, and it really was a fall risk, and she brought that to the nurse's attention. And I just thought the nurse did just a phenomenal job in saying, "You're right. Thank you for pointing that fall risk out." And it was a blanket that they had put over her chair, and it was hanging over where if she got up, she could have tripped over that blanket, and really anyone in the room could have tripped over it. And Joe went on to say that she thought that there needed to be a meeting about this fall risk, and I just thought the nurse did just a phenomenal job in talking with her and saying, you're absolutely right that sometimes our environments, we just get so accustomed to everything, and so it's really nice for patients and families to point out, and I will bring this up in a staff meeting. So I thought that was really neat. And so that's really, getting families and patients involved and respecting their comments. And it was just a really great interaction that I saw. And I'll take it a step further, that improving community health. And when Joe left the hospital, I got her situated back in her apartment, and she cut off her name bracelet from the hospital. But she kept the falls risk bracelet on, and 2 weeks later, being out of the hospital, she still continues to wear that yellow wristband because she thinks that everyone in her retirement community needs to know that she's a fall risk, and she also says it serves to her as a reminder that she needs to be more cautious in her apartment. So I just thought that was neat on how she's taking that really on her own to do that, and I really think that that really just leads a culture of safety, not only within the hospital, but also with her personally, that she's taking that journey and then taking that a step further into her retirement community. So just wanted to share that story. And I think one thing that really I paused and reflected on was maybe the one opportunity for the hospital to really enhance a falls or mobility program is to engage the families and patients up front and say, if you identify a fall risk in this your room, please let someone on our team know, and we will immediately get it addressed. So that was just kind of maybe my aha moment, but it was just something I wanted to share with you today. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Becky.
Thank you so much, Karen. We have certainly appreciated your stories out on the front lines of Joe's care, as you are so kind as a family member to incorporate her in your knowledge and patient and family engagement principles that we've worked on, and actually applying them to life as we see it in our everyday activities. And your cousin is certainly a unique, engaged patient, but at her age, she is exemplary in her knowledge of patient care and wanting to teach others as she receives care. And it's just heartwarming stories every time you come to our office to share those. And keep them coming, because it's an ongoing journey as you jump into her life, and she vice versa into yours. So thank you, Karen. Just a few things. I'm going to update you on some HIIN content. There is a new improvement calculator. I think there's another one that was actually posted in October. I think we're up to version 7.1 actually, and even though this says 7 here. And so be aware that when you pull down version 7.1 of the improvement calculator, there's some new opportunities there. And what you can do is you can use the slicer and categorize which months you want to compare to your baseline. So traditionally, we've always had project-to-date comparisons for harms reduced, lives saved, and financial savings. But you can now compare the last 12 months of your work by checking the last 12 months on the CEO Dashboard tab and take a look at what your improvements compared the last 12 months to your baseline. And what you will see here is a significant increase if indeed your last 12 months are staying below your target improvement. We've looked at it internally within the state, and there's some areas of surprise that you look at what those percent improvements are. It also may demonstrate what your continued opportunities are in the last 12 months as far as perhaps a look towards sustainability that you need to work on if some of your topics are starting to creep back up. So take a look at those two different angles, both project to date and the last 12 months, and I think, or contact us if you would like to have assistance with that. We're happy to run an improvement calculator, talk to any of your HIIN contacts. Secondly, there is a new encyclopedia measure that's out there. They modified the ARC PSI measures for some of those particular ARC measures that we download for many of you. So keep that in mind, and if you need to download that new EOM just for take a gander at that, feel free to, but we will continue to upload those on behalf of many of you hospitals out there. Now, we are in the option 4 period for HIIN, which goes through March of 2020. And during this time period, CMS as well as HIIT are taking a close look monthly at our topics for improvement. So we're not backing off on any improvement initiatives that we're doing. In fact, we're moving further on many of them, and we'll touch on those harm topics in a moment. But we wanted to share with you that there's a milestone for data each month coming up through the end of March. So on this particular slide, you can see what the hospital submission deadline is for your own manual entry, and we on our end are doing the entry for those the hospitals that we do some of that for on your inpatient discharge study data. But essentially, it's the 15th of every month coming up. So, and that will be, as you can see here, let's use milestone 15 as an example, which is coming up in about a week. You had readmissions through July of 2019, whereas all other measures go through August of 2019. So we're always 1 month off. That's no change than what we've asked for before. But also there are 2 time periods, milestone 15 and milestone 18, which is November and February, where we're asking for patient-family engagement data as well as health equity data. So keep those 2 time frames in mind, that you will be getting our consistent communication to complete those spreadsheets for us to do data entry on PFE and health equity on your behalf, as we have done in the past, and we do that particular piece of data entry for you. So this is a night, we'll have these slides uploaded for you. Casey will share those in our upcoming communications with you so you can have these charts available. Secondly, there's a hyperlink at the top of this particular slide, which is our data submission calendar that we've updated not only through the end of 2019, but also for the first quarter of 2020. And so you can see the different dates that I kind of highlighted in the previous slide that you saw, but this is our consistent data submission calendar that we've shared with you during the previous milestones that we've had. And as you can see, the same topics and dates are listed here, that you're entering your NHSN data, you're entering most your manual harms for you, and then you'll be getting communications for PFE and health equity at those months, as I noted. So you can download this data submission calendar and keep it close at your side, as close as you would like, for just to be aware of upcoming dates for data submission. And again, we do have our chat room open. If you have any questions as we're going through, please feel free to list your questions. We're keeping an eye on that, and we'll respond to that. On the right-hand side is Elaine Pittman's picture. And Elaine has been an employee here at IHA for over 16 years, and she is now managing our data related to HIIN and making sure that we're up to date with data submissions, as well as continuing to enter the ARC PSI measures and readmissions measures as she has before. But she's an incredible reference for us internally here, and she also manages our abstracted charts for those hospitals that used us for the clinical outcome profile, outcome metrics as a vendor for that. So keep in mind that she may be communicating with you about any missing data, as will we, and just wanted to make sure that you're aware of her as a team member for us here in the HIIN work that we are doing. I'd refer to the Patient Family Engagement and Health Equity Status Form. We will be sending these forms, as we have in the past, out to you by the end of this week. What we're asking for is you to complete these as usual. You'll be putting an X in the box for the patient-family engagement topics of yes, I'm meeting this, or no, I am not. And our goal for patient and family engagement, the 5 different metrics, is that you are meeting 4 out of 5 of those metrics. And we've continued to work on question number 4, which is having an active patient and family advisory council, or at least one patient who serves on a patient safety or quality improvement committee or team. So question 4 is something we're still working on, as well as question 5, and that is our hospital has 1 or more patients who serve on a governing and or leadership board as a patient or a family member. And oftentimes hospitals are meeting that because people on the board have been patients in your hospital, and designating that one board member to always wear the hat of a patient when considering discussions and topics that come up before the board. So regarding PFE, secondly, health equity status. Health equity topics are being collected in the form of how are you progressing on collecting health equity status items in your hospital. And there are several different areas of data collection, going from data collection to data training, data validation, data stratification, communication of findings, resolving gaps in care based on those inequitable statuses that you're finding in populations, and then organizational structure and culture. And the basic definitions are included here, but our goal is to have everyone meeting basic, at least, as well as working on some kind of form in each of these different data collection processes for health equity. And we thank you all so very much for your progress. We've done very well so far. We'd like to see this push to get everyone at basic and meeting 4 out of 5, basic for the health equity status measures, and meeting 4 out of 5 of the patient-family engagement metrics. So we will be sending you these by the end of the week, and if you could send these completed forms back to us by November 15th, so we, your HIIN key contacts, can do data entry in the CDS system on your behalf on these 2 topics. Next, we're going to talk a little bit, in addition to Karen's incredible connected purpose story about patient and family engagement, we're going to talk about a topic that's an upcoming HRET webinar called What Matters to You? And this is within the patient and family engagement modules. Initially, The Institute for Healthcare Improvement began with some content around joy in healthcare and incorporating joy back into healthcare by encouraging managers to do rounds and asking employees and patients what matters to you. And the best way to actually improve health outcomes is to initially meet the needs of the patient's perceived needs. So what we're doing here is providing webinars. HRET is providing patient and family engagement webinars about what matters to you around receiving, recording, respecting, and telling the story about what matters to you. And we'll go on to a little bit more of the telling the story later in this. But we wanted you to understand that what matters to you is the engagement that we do with our individual patients. And this is the unique place that close bedside clinicians and family members also hold in discussing the needs of the patient with that particular patient and caregiver. So pulling it from what matters to you, the staff member, to also what matters to you as the patient and family in the clinical scenario is a very important part of understanding the key strategies for meeting the patient's needs, but also telling the stories that will inspire action in hospitals. And we're going to talk a little bit more about inspiring by stories in some of our upcoming slides here. But in the meantime, what I want you to think about, and I mentioned this on the chat, is to share any specific harm reduction topics that you are celebrating in your hospital that you'd like to say, we want to celebrate these improvements. And we're going to discuss them a way later on in this presentation about how you can share that content and celebration, whether it's patient-family engagement or it's a harm topic, either one. What are you going to celebrate? And we'll give you a managed way that we like to see everyone celebrate in just a moment. And now I'd like to turn my webinar over to Madeline for preventing patient harm.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I want to share a couple of activities coming up and give you some information as well. The first is our surgical safety SSI prevention. We've had this ongoing for a while now, and we've had some tremendous involvement and seeing some good outcomes as well. These are our half-hour IHA office calls, and once again, the next one will be Tuesday, November 26th from 11:30 to 12. This focus will be on post-op complications around PEs, DVTs, and sepsis, and we have the Zoom connection on here as well. Annette Handy will be leading this, so please join us in this continuation of the SSI work. Second of all, we have sepsis across the continuum. So Mrs. Becky Hancock, our local sepsis expert, will also be leading some more conversations on some office hour calls. And as you can see here, we have 3 calls listed, or 2 calls listed for this year and 2 that will be coming in the first of 2020. That's weird to say that we're looking at 2020 already. But anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about best practice sharing, bundle compliance, screening, and then moving into the prevention and post-op sepsis syndrome and readmissions. So stay tuned for more information about that as well. One topic that I did want to bring up, last week we had a webinar and discussed prevalence study for pressure injuries. In review of our data, and we do have a large amount of data now, and I thank you all for working so hard for getting this data entered, but what I wanted to point out is where we're at with this data from the beginning of the program in October of 16 through our August data. We have 891 documented stage 2 and above hospital-acquired pressure injuries that were actually found during that one-day prevalence study. When I go on to look at our pressure ulcer stage 3, 4, and unstageable, which is your PSI number 3 data, we have 118 reported. And so there's a pretty large discrepancy between those 2 numbers. So that was my first moment of, I wonder if we have some some issues with how we're reporting this data. I would definitely hope to see a smaller number on the stage 3, 4, and unstageable, but the thought of 891 hospital-acquired pressure ulcers reported on just that one day of prevalence caused me to want to dig a little bit deeper. And so what I wanted to share with you, in the event that you aren't aware of this, I know that definitions can become very confusing, and pressure injury definitions have changed over the last 3 years, but what you are recording under your prevalence study should only be hospital-acquired pressure injuries. So when you're doing your surveillance on that day, those patients that you have that have a pressure injury do not include your present on admission. So I'm asking for you to just kind of take a look at that data and kind of assess whether you are recording all of pressure injuries that you see on your prevalence day, or if you have sorted out those hospital acquired from the present on admission. So what I have done, and I will be doing an outreach, the top hospitals that seem to have a high number, I'll be doing a one-on-one contact just to see if we can go over your data and really assess whether, one, we do have the right definition, and two, if you do, what kind of resources can we, IHA, bring to you to help you with this. And just as a little heads up, in the first quarter of 2020, we will be offering an additional wound care training. We had 2 of them last year or at the beginning of the year, and we will be hosting another one. This will not be a repeat of the same one that we had, but I am working right now with Nancy Morgan from the Wound Care Institute, who did our last 2 trainings, and we're going to tailor it a little bit more to looking at what the needs of Indiana are. And so that's why I'm looking forward to having some outreach with you and find out, you know, what are your struggles and what are your barriers, and what specific education can we bring to you and your staff to help with that. So more to come on that. I also wanted to let you know, in case you weren't able to join, last week we also had a Falls Rewind. Recording is available on our website. It is linked in blue, and we will have these slides shared with you all so you can have all this contact information as well. In the recording, you'll hear we just kind of talked about where we are in our improvement journey. And as Becky has mentioned, the new improvement calculator is pretty cool because we've been able to see how your improvement perhaps over the last 12 months differs from where you were at in the first 12 months. One hospital I know that's been working so hard, and I hope to have them speak about it and tell their story, has seen a 48% improvement in their falls with harms over the last 12 months. And they've implemented some a whole plethora of new changes and new programming, and this is just a good way of showing, hey, you know what, this does work. So anyway, the recording is available. It's about 35 minutes long, not even a full hour, so take a listen and please let me know if you have any questions. So for questions for any of these topics, Becky Hancock is the sepsis lead, Annette Handy is the surgical site infection lead, and I am the falls and pressure injury lead. So at any time, please do not hesitate to reach out to us for any questions that you might have. So moving on to our next bucket is to lead a culture of safety. So a little conversation about the PI collaborative for the HIIN participants right now. And I just want to start off by saying, go Team Indiana. This was a voluntary program that HRET has put out, and it's a performance improvement
collaborative, a little bit different than the sprints and the relays and things, but it's kind of more focused on you being able to pick your project and going through the steps of how do you do a performance improvement collaborative. But the cool thing about it is we're put into groups. And so our group, which is number 2, is working with Maryland, Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia Hospital Association. So we're able to share with each other. These are monthly webinars. December is not included, but they started the first call already, and the last one will be in March. And November 12th is an extension on the deadline if you have not signed up and are still considering it. 27 hospitals in Indiana are participating in this right now, and that may be, I think it's pretty much one of the top states for the most hospitals participating. So please know that, you can still sign up for this. It's really, it's going to be great. So, how will you tell your story? I'm going to now share this back with Becky.
Yes. Thank you, Madeline. HRT is, and I want to mention to those of you who are dying to use our chat room that if you put your cursor up towards the top of the page, there will be a black bar that drops down and it says chat, and you can click that and it will open up the chat room for you should you choose to list any areas of specific harm reduction that you are celebrating in your hospital. We know what we see from the data, but we want to hear from you what areas of harm reduction that you are celebrating within your hospital, just as an example of a celebration. And the question comes back to how do you and how will you tell your story? So HRET has provided for us a toolkit about combining data with your narrative. And I don't want to use the word story entirely. I think that narrative better describes the process by which we put words with our data to tell a complete story. So as an example, for example, let's say that you've had 0 CLABSIs in your ICU for the last 6 months or so. And any time period is fine that you choose, but an area that you want to celebrate. And then you can show your data, but also combine it with a story using the HRET case study kit. So we're asking that you take a look at these areas of celebration that you would like to combine a scenario, such as a connected purpose story. It may be an individual patient story, or it may be a collective staff improvement effort that you are celebrating. And what we're asking for is to combine that patient and family story with the data. Thank you for that little animation. I didn't know it was in there. There you go. So at the top of this particular page is a hyperlink for the case study template that's on the HRET-HIIN website. And as you can see here from the picture, it goes about general information and then the team with a short description of the team and the credentials and which were initiated, who initiated interventions and made this work happen. So using this particular template, it allows you to share general information, the content of the team, identifying a need, the focus on improvement, what data you're going to display, and I might offer that if you go to the CDS website and click on the Reports tab, it takes you directly to an area where you can use the drop-down key to find whatever indicator you want to see the data on and do a snippet or download that particular graph that shows your improvement. Then what were the lessons learned and the next steps and some sort of photo associated with that. So we believe that research has shown that if a person has interest in data, shall we say, in numbers, which I personally cannot imagine, but I realize that there are people out there who have disinterest in data despite all of my efforts to get someone excited about data. So what this does is it provides a narrative that goes with that, and this may engage a person in action who may not have believed that action was necessary just by listening to the data. And by having a story that has emotions involved that may link with something that happened with your Aunt Joe or Uncle Bob or whatever, you may hear some grain of truth that relates to your experiences that may be contrary to what you were experiencing before. And by listening to that, it really engages more people in the improvement efforts with this narrative as well as with the data. So we use two different pathways with which to inspire people to action or to allow them to understand the work that we're doing. Now here's our specific ask from our HIIN hospitals. We want to celebrate your successes with you. So what we're asking, we'll do a summary of our specific asks related to this in just a moment. We'll have it all on the slides so we don't overwhelm you totally. But this particular ask is that by November 27th of 2019, that you go out and download this case study template and share with us an area of success that you are thrilled with that you have done through the HIIN. Now, I know that we in the quality areas are always problem-focused, just like every patient is a problem list, every patient population is a problem identification process through the quality department. But stop for a moment and take a look at the successes, and we ask that you use a case study template to do so. This can be used to share with your board. It can be used to share internally with teams, but specifically we're asking you to share it with us by November 27th of 2019 in order to us share it with potentially with the Patient Safety and Quality Council that meets the first week of December. So that's about 3.5 weeks away, but we want you to think about creating your own story. It's not a difficult template to use. It's very simple, and we are more than willing to work with you on developing your own template. These are storyboards that can be put on board format should you so choose to. And again, we are very much available for help with you. Any other comments about the case study templates that anyone here on the team, because we've had some pretty intensive discussions about the value that we see in these case study presentations. Any comments from anyone here in the room?
Well, one thing to keep in mind, a lot of you have done some case study type applications for, say, AHA conferences and things like that. And we've had people that have been chosen and have taken them, you know, to Arizona and San Diego to actually attend a national conference and present their story. And so I think that the one thing that's really good about this case study template, not only does it kind of give you that one leg up on having a format already in place that you can continually submit this to different organizations and entities such as AHA or Team Steps or the Rural Health Conference, anything like that, but also any kind of local celebrations. You know, some of the safety coalitions have separate celebrations and awards given for improvement efforts, and also our very own Patient Safety Summit every year. We would love if every hospital told us one story. Now keep in mind, it's not always about 30% improvement, 27% improvement. It's not always about a number. It could be a complete process change. It could be how you redesigned your culture of safety program. It could be anything surrounding a change in a work pattern and how it has implemented new strategies and maybe revived some life in some of your patient safety campaigns. So be creative. There is no wrong answer, and we would really love, you know, our goal is to have all of our hospitals submit one celebratory story.
Thank you, Madeline. There are examples of these case study templates on the HIIN website, and a lot of it is narrative. So if you're writing your opinion of what's going on, it's got some data pieces, but narratives are also data for us to look at. It's not just objective numbers that we're looking for here. It's the narratives about how the process flowed and how it evolved for you. And a lot of times we can learn as much from those narratives by sharing those narratives as we can from sharing the specific data improvements. Because we might have learned more from the narrative than we actually learned from the data. So we want to keep them both together. We thank you so much in advance for submitting your ideas to us and your case studies, preferably by November 27th, but we'll probably be looking at them again over the next few months. This is an ongoing effort, but as far as some opportunities to provide this feedback to our Patient Safety and Quality Council, which guides our Patient Safety Center work here, and IHA, the guiding council, we would like to be able to share some of those on your behalf, because we are so very thankful for all the work that you've done to make all the improvements in the state in harm and readmission reduction.
So another save the date is, I am not sure if any of you receive any email communication from ARC, but drum roll please, the new 2.0 Culture of Safety Survey has been introduced, and we will be rolling that out in January of 2020. I have been watching this for 2.5 years in development through many hospital pilot projects. I think that everybody is going to really appreciate this Culture of Safety Survey more, mainly because I think that the language is easier for folks to understand. The survey is shorter, and I think people will celebrate that. I think it's 18 questions shorter. But we will have some further information. An invite will be coming soon for a December 17th webinar to talk about how we will roll this out and what the changes are between the 1.0 and the 2.0. So stay tuned for more information on that. Moving on to the improved community health bucket, let's talk about health equity in your community. We have been doing some promotion of talking about coding for the social determinants of health, and this goes hand in hand along with the metrics that we have asked you to evaluate and submit for HRET. You have the PFE part, and then you have the health equity metrics. And we have presented a couple of times to some different places, and Matt Browning, who is our VP of our Business Intelligence Department, is working with me and helping me to look at how many of these codes are being used that actually address the social determinants of health. And so for further information, please feel free to reach out to me, but we will be doing some more presenting across the state to our patient safety coalitions, and also we are presenting one-on-one to hospital departments. And now I will turn this back over to Karen.
Okay. Thanks, Madeline, and thanks, Becky. I guess before we kind of wrap this up, I just wanted to pause and see if there's any questions in the chat function, or Casey, if you want to maybe unmute just for
lady that came
minutes.
yesterday.
Does anyone have any comments or questions to ask?
She was very appreciative of me coming. She said, well,
Someone actually is not on mute.
Very pleasant. But honestly, it's probably about the only one who has
Sounds like a good meeting, though.
like kind of surprised that.
How about any comments
The
in
other
the chat? Is
people
there
have-
anything in the chat function?
This is very nice. Your patient-driven care scenario. Lydia Adams mentioned that she liked your patient-driven care scenario.
Okay. Thank you, Lydia. Okay, well, as you think about any questions or comments that you have, I'm just going to summarize some of the call to actions. First, for those hospitals that are participating in HRET's PI Collaborative, the assessments are due on November 12th. We are encouraging everyone to identify somebody at your hospital and have them register for the What Matters to You HRET PFE webinars by November 12th. Keep in mind that the data is due into CDS and NHSN by November 15th, and for those who we pull data from the IDS, we will certainly be getting that uploaded for you as well. Also, the PFE and the health equity operational matrix. If you could return those to your HIIN key contact by November 15th. And keep in mind you will be receiving an email from your HIIN key contact here at IHA that will outline this information for your data as well as your PFE too. So keep a lookout for that email by the end of this week. And then if you could make your commitment to submit a case study by November 27th, we would greatly appreciate it. And please know we are also going to be doing some reach out to hospitals as well, especially if we've seen, like looking at the data, and you've made a huge improvement in one of the harm topics. Be on that lookout. That will be kind of nudging you along, saying, would you want to write this up as a case study?
I just had a thought that we may end up actually doing case studies for the state of Indiana, should we so choose to do presentation and data and story form about some of the work that we've done, and a statewide case study presentation may be a very interesting and different approach. And it may be that we get several case studies related to one topic and we combine that into one and just highlight the work across the state. We always do that verbally, and the HRET Hospital Association Network often ask us to share of the work that you all are doing, and so we've shared that freely, and some of it has certainly been copied across the nation in efforts that they're doing out there after we share that. So thank you, and we look forward to your feedback.
One more call out for any questions or comments?
Oh, no.
No? Okay. That will go ahead and end the call, and please know we're here if you have any questions or comments, feedback, or need some assistance. We're glad to help you. Thank you.